everyone. I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to the June 16th Executive Committee meeting. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of Treaty 4 territory, a treaty signed with 35 First Nations across southern Saskatchewan and parts of Alberta and Manitoba, and the original lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. Just a reminder to please turn off your phones, microphones, and video until it's time for you to speak. For members of the public, just a notice that Executive Committee reports EX 21-42, 43, and 44 will be considered by City Council at its meeting on June 23rd. The deadline to register as a delegation for the meeting is 12 p.m. on Monday, June 21st. EX 21-46, the Buffalo Pound Water Renewal Financing Report, will be considered by City Council at its meeting on July 14th, and the deadline to register as a delegation for the meeting is 12 p.m. on Monday, July 12th. For members of committee and those in attendance, we have a very hard stop at 1:30 p.m. We do have a mandatory break at 11:15. We'll deal with this when time comes, but I would ask that we focus on a working meeting lunch starting at noon, so we can get through as much of the agenda as possible. We have a lot of items to consider. So just as a heads up to all of those attending remotely. So if I could get a motion to approve the public agenda, please.
Bresciani.
Councillor Bresciani. Any opposed to the public agenda? Hearing none, public agenda carries. I need a motion to approve minutes from the Executive Committee meeting of June 2nd.
Hawkins.
Councillor Hawkins. Any errors or omissions? Hearing none. Any opposed to approval of the minutes from June 2nd? Minutes carried. Our first item is EX 21-42, request to amend exemption conditions, Regina Airport Authority. I understand that there are some delegates, so if we could make that happen. Yeah, great. So to the delegates in attendance and with committee's indulgence, I'll grant you 10 minutes for the presentation. And whenever you're ready, if you could identify yourself for the record, who you represent, and where you reside.
Hi, good morning. My name is James Bogus. I'm joined by Jenna Curry. We're both from the Regina Airport Authority. Thank you very much for having us today. Through the committee chair, we would just like to present today regarding the request for an extension to our tax exemption. And prior to having that discussion, we'd like to give a brief update on the airport. Jenna is joining me today as our Chief Financial Officer. We're happy to answer any questions about the taxation at the airport or any matters related to our finances as well. So with the committee's indulgence, I'd like to go ahead and share my screen now for a brief presentation prior to answering any questions you may have. Just want to confirm, is everyone able to see a presentation up on your screen?
We can, yes.
Excellent, thank you so much. So, much like every business, I'm sure, in Regina, as well as all of southern Saskatchewan, the airport has seen no shortage of challenges. And I just want to state we very much appreciate all of council's support, as well as administration support throughout this pandemic. There is no doubt our community is rallying right now, and we are now seeing many signs of a recovery with a lot of positivity compared to what we would have been talking about even just 6 months ago, especially in aviation. So one of the key areas of the really relates to the discussion today about our request for an extension to the tax exemption is about ensuring we have air service in our community that we can count on. As you can imagine, the pandemic has been devastating. And one of the key drivers for air service is the seats that we offer in our market. Think of a seat as an unsold seat on an airplane in which the airlines are hoping someone purchases. This is the capacity measure that allows our community to host events, to allow guests and tourists to come to Regina, and more importantly, offer our own residents choice of what markets they can visit themselves. As you'll see by the slide up on the screen, the seat count for the airport has dropped dramatically since the pandemic, which is of no surprise. The challenge we're having right now is at least till the month of May, and I just recently had my data provided, we're trending at around 10% passenger volume still, and our seats are less than 30% of pre-pandemic levels. So it's been very, very challenging for those airlines to make a business here in the Queen City. This is not unique, by the way, to our city. This is an issue right across Canada. Now, we've had some success, though. This has not all been bad news. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to travel recently, but if you look at what airlines are serving our city, we've had a return of Flair Air, and this has been a great boon as they are an ultra-low-cost airline, which provides very affordable fares to two city pairs, both Vancouver and Toronto. It's also added competition for WestJet and Air Canada, which has helped keep the fares low on a couple of those primary routes. We've had some good announcements this year as well. Most recently, we've had an announcement from Air Canada that they're going to be offering a brand new city pair between Regina and Montreal. Now, this service was originally slated to begin early in July. It's been delayed 1 month, and they're going to be starting August 1st. They're going to run that service up until Labor Day, and we're very pleased that they've been able to bring this into the city for the first time ever, despite all the challenges that we've had with the pandemic. And the same thing applies to WestJet Airlines. WestJet is taking a lot of risk, and I want to thank our mayor, along with a number of other dignitaries in our city, who recently joined us for a WestJet summit, in which they reconfirmed just last week the importance of Saskatchewan, and specifically Regina, as part of their network. And as part of that commitment, WestJet, in addition to adding services to cities like Edmonton, which, by the way, they have not been flying to for many months, also the return of Vancouver and Toronto from WestJet, they're adding a brand new route to Kelowna. This is going to be a service that'll be a summer service as a trial, and given the propensity for domestic travel, which we hope will start materializing soon, we hope this will be a real winner for the citizens who are here or those in Kelowna wanting to visit our beautiful region. The other big news, not sure if you saw this yesterday in the media, but we were able to announce that Sunwing Airlines is now returning to Regina. This is incredible. Sunwing is going to be offering 6 non-stop services starting in December, running right through April, to beautiful sun destinations in both Mexico and Cuba. I don't know about you, but if you're feeling confident for travel coming up in the winter, getting away would be a real nice treat given how little travel we had last year. Now, all of this didn't happen by accident. We didn't just show up one day and airlines came to us and said, we want to fly to your city. What we've been doing is actively marketing, communicating with the airlines, and in some cases having to reduce their risk. And when I talk about reducing the risk, I'm talking about incentives, supporting a marketing campaign, and hopefully very soon with our provincial reopening plan, which, by the way, we're incredibly supportive of, we hope to start marketing travel and safe travel as the province starts lifting more restrictions in the future. We've been very sensitive to those restrictions and very respectful of them, so obviously we'll await Dr. Shahab and the province to provide more direction. But the key for all of this is that our airport, throughout the pandemic, has maintained a very low-cost structure. I've shared with the committee, and I know council in the past, the significant reductions in expenses our airport had to make during the pandemic, including the reduction of staff, capital programs, and operating budgets. We've done our part. We lost over $13 million last year. And we know that the future is still a little uncertain, but we know it's got a much brighter end than we saw last year. And part of this low-cost structure, and now tying into the tax exemption requests we have today, is the wonderful support that council has provided in the past to this airport to help maintain a low fee structure to our carriers and hoping to stimulate a flight to the United States. In terms of air service, cities that were not as low cost as Regina during the pandemic, in some cases, lost a major carrier. For example, Quebec City, which is far larger than Regina in terms of population, lost WestJet altogether. And this chart clearly depicts our average fees to the airline. We're that golden bar in the middle, and you can see where we stack against the country. Other than cities with very limited winter, like Victoria and in some cases Kelowna, Regina is one of the lowest cost airports in the country, which means we're competitively advantaged to attract airlines here to offer service to our city. And the tax exemption directly helps us keep those costs lower to the airline. And I'm proud to share that during the pandemic and even before, we didn't raise our fees a single dollar since I've been here as CEO. And we also have had a very supportive board of this model. Finally, I want to give a brief update on U.S. air service. And when I conclude my remarks, I do have some commercially sensitive information. If it's the will of the committee, I'm happy to share, but it would have to be done so in camera. So this information is available for the public that I'm going to share now. It is of no surprise, but we've been marketing actively to a U.S. airline. We've also been actively marketing to Canadian airlines, asking them to consider flying to a United States hub. And why we're doing this is there's been a great deal of demand from our residents, our business community, to give them better connectivity. I'm using Denver as one of the target hubs. There's Minneapolis, there's Chicago, and there's Denver. Denver, as you can see by this route map, it looks like an octopus with many legs, offers services all across the United States, with many of these cities not being available from Canadian hubs. It offers competition. It offers business connectivity. It helps us bring people here for conferences, events, and tourism. We haven't had a U.S. service since 2015, daily. We've got great sun destinations, but no business linkages directly with the U.S. without going through a Canadian airport. The economic impact is massive. What you're seeing here, and I just will highlight the bottom right-hand side of your slide, is the estimate of economic impact for 2 flights a day to Denver is well over $10 million, and that's on a very small 50-seat regional jet. It provides social connectivity, jobs, economic activity. It's very important for our city. And finally, the border. This has been the big issue. We can't attract a flight to fly nonstop to a U.S. hub, regardless of our efforts, regardless of incentives, and regardless of our partners in the city, many of which you've heard before, Economic Development Regina, the Chambers, the Hotel Association. We've all come together to market this route and these routes to the U.S., but the border right now remains closed for non-essential travel. Things are moving in the right direction. We've implemented strategies here to work with our Canadian Airports Council to help encourage the government to move forward on a safe border reopening. We also have to recognize that in the U.S., their air service is now over 70%, that's 70, of pre-pandemic levels. And again, we're floating at about 10 here in Canada. We know there's better days coming ahead. And finally, I want to leave you with this, to give you some optimism about border and border reopening. Other than what you see in the press, the Canadian government themselves has formed essentially an advisory group to make recommendations on how to allow vaccinated travelers or partially vaccinated travelers to come through our border safely. And we're hoping the government adopts these. It'll include testing, it'll include vaccinations, and it will also include safety protocols, which we already have in place here at your airport. We have COVID testing here every day of the week, 7 days a week, with a local company called Haztec, and we're ready to welcome guests from the U.S., welcome to have our residents travel back and forth when the government says it's safe to do so. We are depending on keeping our low-cost model. We're losing a lot of money still, but we certainly hope Council will continue to invest in air service. And the way you can do that is by supporting an extension to our tax exemption. I thank you for listening, and I'd love to take any questions, and I'll stop sharing my screen here momentarily. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks a lot, James. Mayor Masters.
I would actually, considering the comments that were made by Mr. Bogus, I would make a motion to move in camera.
Okay. All right, so for members of the committee and for members of the public who might be watching, there's a motion to move in camera, and I believe that is to address some of the commercially sensitive information that has been identified. And I also want to make clear that does not mean we'll be making a decision in camera, but simply we will be hearing information that is commercially sensitive. So I will put that vote to members of committee to go into camera. Okay. Is anybody opposed to moving in camera? Hearing none. All right, so I will assume that the motion then has been carried to move in camera, and then I would ask that only members of ELT and members of administration who are required to be on the line for this particular report stay. If I could ask everyone, please, to leave the meeting for the time being. Okay. So, is the feed working? Good. All right. Welcome back. Again, a reminder to members of the public and those back on the line, no decisions were made when we were in camera. We simply discussed commercially sensitive material. I would invite now members of committee to ask questions in the public session to our delegates. Councillor Zakidniak, I believe you had a question that you would prefer to ask in public. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I just, first of all, I'll start with the easiest one. I'm wondering if we can get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that you gave us today.
Yes.
Okay. And then the second one is I just want some clarity of what we are being asked through the chair, please. So my understanding is what we are being asked today is for an extension of the conditions of the property tax exemption agreement. So not an extension of the agreement, but an extension of, I guess, point A and point B, the daily year-round U.S. hub service. Is that accurate?
Yes, and the finances as well, keeping our fees low to the airlines under CPI. Yes.
Okay, and so, but we had already agreed to give you this property tax exemption until sorry, if you can clarify that. Where is it?
James, perhaps you can comment on the previous agreement and why we're talking about an extension.
Yes.
Sure. Just to keep this as simple as we can, the original agreement was a 5-year agreement with the understanding that within the first 2 years, we would at least have an airline commit, not necessarily begin service, but commit to service to a U.S. hub, whether it be a Canadian airline, an American airline, etc. The other part of the exemption requires the airport to keep as a cumulative total over a 5-year period our fee increases to the airlines no more than the CPI here in Regina. Those are the two conditions. As a result of the pandemic, not as a result of lack of effort, it became impossible to meet the condition when we have a closed border to encourage an airline, whether it be Canadian or American, to fly here. It just wouldn't be commercially viable for essential travel only. And that's why we're here today, is simply asking for more time, is the simplest way I can put it. More time to complete these conditions, given that it became insurmountable with the pandemic and the border closure.
Okay, yeah, so that was my understanding. You just need more time to secure this daily year-round U.S. hub service.
That's exactly correct. We believe it's achievable. We'll do our best, is all I can say, but we need more time. It's impossible right now. That's really what it comes down to.
Okay, and then so this current exemption expires in 2023, and then so we would be addressing at some point, I don't know if in terms of, so this was a 5-year agreement, so sometime prior to then, you're either going to come back to us and ask us for something new, or it will just expire. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. I would like to put forward, I will certainly be coming back for something new as long as we meet these conditions. The idea was an investment in the airport to retain air service, but also to grow air service. But we want to prove to you that it's worth the investment we're putting in. We've proven that on the fees, but I'd like to prove it on the transborder service as well.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Councillor Hawkins, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Vilras, for your presentation. I have two general questions. The first is, has the federal government yet committed to any help to airports arising out of the problem they faced with the pandemic?
Yes, they have. There has been 3 major commitments, one of which we've received. Much like many businesses, the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy. That is something we've used since it's been available, including, unfortunately, all the layoffs we had to do, but we did our best. The other 2 have been commitments only. We have not received anything yet from the federal government. However, in the budget that it was tabled back in April, they've committed to a formula for about 22 airports in the country, which Regina is expecting to receive $2.6 million to help offset some of the massive losses we've suffered and continue to suffer today. And there's also an additional program called the Regional Air Transportation Initiative. We call it RATI, R-A-T-I in our world. And we've made a request for additional funding, which we hope will be, Councillor Hawkins, I can't tell you the amount other than to say we're hoping it'll be $1 or $2 million to add to that 2.6, again, to make investments to offset not only our losses, but to keep the airport functioning. Neither of those 2 larger programs we've seen anything from yet. We're simply hopeful that we'll see something in the future this year, but that's not yet materialized.
Are the investments that you've incurred, are they being financed through debt? And if so, will these government grants, should they come through, help with that?
So the short answer is yes. Everything we're doing today is being financed with debt, period. We are in our line of credit, and we're continuing to work with our bank to hopefully extend terms and provide more grace for the airport's lack of debt service ratio coverage that we're in today. In terms of these government programs, to give you a sense of scale, $2.6 million is going to be wonderful. It's worth about 2 months of our expenses. So in terms of the scale in which we expect to receive, as much as this will be helpful, what we really need is passengers. We need air service, not government handouts. The amount that they're providing is purely insufficient compared to our needs, but I hope we're all agreeing that the future is brighter and hopefully we can start self-funding again. So we're very optimistic on that, and we're hoping that we see some of this money materialize in, even the fall from the government.
Thank you, helpful. I have one other question, Mr. Chair, through you. Just as the pandemic arrived, my recollection is the council approved additional bus service from the center of the city to the airport. Where does that stand today? I gather it was suspended, but is there a plan for that to go back into operation? Where does bus service stand?
Sure. I would love to also invite administration maybe to comment on this, but I can say administration has been nothing short of supportive, as with council. We even outlined a spot for where the bus could come in front of the terminal. My vice president, who's not on the call today, worked very collaboratively, Mr. Onrait's office, in terms of schedules and working through details, and then the pandemic hit. The airport also made a financial commitment to help subsidize the service in its initial period, and we all agreed that because of the implosion in not only staff at the airport with all the closures of the shops and reductions, plus the fact that we had very few passengers, didn't make as much sense any longer to offer it yet. I hope, though, that between administration and council, we'll see renewed support. We very much desire it, but we also want it to be successful for both parties. And right now, we're still sadly in the very low passenger volumes today, but hopefully we can revisit that in the near future as we see a recovery. I don't know if maybe administration would like to add to that.
Thank you. I can ask them when time.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Hawkins, I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Findura.
That was me. There you go. Mr. Bogus, thank you very much for presenting. It's always a treat to see such a enthusiastic positiveness of what Regina means to all of us. Control tower, staying here, that probably plays a big role of what you were asking for. Am I correct in that assumptions? That if the control tower wasn't here, we would have been in deeper trouble, correct?
If the control tower was lost, Councillor Findura, it would have been a massive challenge for this airport. It would not have stopped flights altogether. What it would have done is reduce the capacity of the airport to handle a number of things at once. So when we have a lot of flights come back, vehicles moving on the airfield, it becomes very challenging when you don't have that direct control. And I have to plug the efforts of council and our mayor, as well as our province, as well as many partners. We had MPs, we had business groups, and again, I got to say our mayor specifically went out with our premier, rallied the troops in these other cities, really helped bring attention to this matter, and as council is well aware, it's now resolved, and having this control tower is going to be essential to ensuring we have a growing airport once again.
So thank you, Mr. Bogus, too, Mr. Chair. That's the kind of setting up the question about where we need to be and extension. It is a positive. So let's say for some reason extension is not possible. What does that mean?
It's going to be further financially challenging for the airport. You know, one of the things that I want to highlight, and I mentioned in my public remarks earlier, is the importance of the fee structure to the airlines. If we raise our fees and charges to the airlines when they themselves are literally taking a beating financially, and we got to push the noise off to the side. They've been given loans by the government. They have not been given grants. There's a huge difference between the two. And I recognize there's some public sentiment around, you know, refunds, and I'm very sensitive to that. But that is not an issue for the airport. That's an issue for the airlines. We're here to serve medevac. We're here to serve cargo. We're here to serve commercial flights. We have a beautiful flight training school with the Regina Flying Club. We serve all of these customers, not just passenger service. And your investment helps keep our fees low to all the airplanes that come here. And I want to stress this point. We are a not-for-profit company. Your investment does not go into my pocket. Your investment goes to attracting airlines, to keeping airlines, and we're hopeful that as we start rebounding from this pandemic, we're going to see more traffic overall, which is very beneficial for jobs in our local GDP.
Mr. Bogus, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a quick comment. Thank you for your passion and taking this on. Stressful times, but I'm looking forward working and making sure that Regina grows. And this is the number one issue here. We need that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other names there, so I'll ask James. I just need a confirmation follow-up from Bob's question. The airport is still willing to financially contribute to a public transit route to the airport should it become viable. Is that correct? I believe $100,000 was on the table earlier. You're still willing to do that if the city and the demand for it arises again post-COVID. Is that correct?
I want to unequivocally say yes. And in addition, I'm sure there'll be other initiatives that the city and the airport will voluntarily collaborate on that are for the benefit of our citizens, not necessarily just airport matters, as per our recently signed municipal agreement. And I mean that in the spirit of what that agreement's all about. So yes.
Perfect. I see no more questions. I would encourage you to stay tuned in, but you can leave the call, and we're going to now turn it over to administration. So Jenna and James, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having us today. Appreciate it.
Okay. I'll ask Mr. Lacey to introduce the report. And in your opening remarks, if you could comment on the financial implications for the city in terms of lost revenue from this, as well as what it means for the education tax component. At the same time, if you could comment on where the airport fits into our overall economic development strategy in the community. Mr. Lacey.
Thank you. To you, Mr. Chair. So maybe to just summarize a lot of what has been discussed already. In 2019, City Council approved the Regina Airport Authority for a 5-year partial property tax exemption in the amount of $311,400 a year. That's the municipal portion. So that the Regina Airport Authority could secure a daily year-round direct flight service to a U.S. hub. And one of the conditions on that 5-year piece was that that be secured by January 1st of 2021 while continuing to retain current air service. I think we all know, due to the significant disruptions to airport operations because of the pandemic, the authority is requesting that the conditions of that exemption agreement be amended to give the airport more time to secure that direct air service to U.S. Hub. And so essentially what is being requested here is those conditions with respect to securing a commitment from an airline to provide that service be moved to December 31st of 2022. As mentioned previously, that was January 1st of 2021, so basically in 2 years. And then secondly, that service commenced by December 31st of 2023, and under the previous condition, it was 2021. So essentially, the conditions are the same. All the other conditions the Regina Airport Authority has been meeting in that 5-year agreement. And we are keeping that time frame of the 5 years currently the same. So the actual projected annual impact doesn't change if council agrees to amending those conditions as that original commitment had been over a 5-year period.
Thank you. Questions from committee? Sorry, just hang on. I'll need someone to move the report, please.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to do that. Hawkins.
Councillor Hawkins, do you have any questions for administration?
I have one question for the administration. Can you follow up, please, on the public transport issue from the city to the airport that Mr. Bogas commented on in connection with the chairs and my question?
Mr. Onright.
Through the chair, Mr. Boquist is correct. That was put on hold during the pandemic. Administration is still waiting for things to get back to normal or somewhat normal. We are in discussions with the airport authority and would move forward as council had approved this in the 2021 budget.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll just make a very brief comment. I was very pleased with the information received from Mr. Bogas this morning. Without a strong, viable airport, Regina is an island in a sea of prairie land cut off. So it's absolutely essential to our economy, for family connections, for a movement of goods, including vaccines in and out of Toronto, in and out of Regina, that we have a strong airport, and I believe this is a building step towards achieving a bright future for our airport, so I support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Zakidniak?
Thank you. I also support this request. To me, it's it's completely understandable why the exemption would be needed for securing flights to a U.S. hub. I do have a question. So it was indicated by the delegates that it sounds like once this current property tax exemption expires in 2023, there will be an additional request for future supports from us. What I'm wondering is if we have the desire as a council to tie a future property tax exemption or future supports to certain conditions, if that would be appropriate or possible. I'm thinking about our goal to be a renewable Regina or a sustainable community. So if as part of that property, the tax exemption, there was perhaps some sort of work needed to be described in relation to how the airport is becoming more sustainable. So I'd just like a comment from administration if that sort of thing is possible. So tying an exemption to certain goals or movement towards those goals.
Who'd like to take that? Mr. Holden.
So through you, Mr. Chair, so, the current exemption is in place to 2023. Obviously, their focus and priority right now is securing, the U.S. border hub. I think beyond 2023, to support the airport. I'm sure there will be a future request, and I think it's well within council's purview and authority to tie some requirements in terms of initiatives that the airport would undertake to support achieving the vision to 2050. I know that the airport already is currently doing a number of things to, demonstrate that they're a responsible partner within the community, and they're working to achieve, sustainability initiatives. But definitely as we move forward, it would be more than appropriate for council to put some specific requirements if the tax exemption is extended beyond 2023.
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just really want to make a comment, if that's okay. I think that the key here is if this is not a time for an exemption, I don't know when is. And we've seen the airport, we've seen many industries, but the airport is a key hub for us, not just for our city, but for our province. And I remember from the previous council when we had a discussion with the airport and removing those exemptions and the impact. They work so hard in our community to, as we've heard, get involved in the community, contributing back into the community, looking at giving dollars back to transit, things like that. So this is a time that I have to say that I absolutely support this. Mr. Bogus and his work and the committee has absolutely done everything in their power to, I guess, stay afloat. And when we think about the jobs, but also the economic piece, I would say that many residents of Regina are asking for that. They want to ensure that our airport is here because it's quality of life as well. So I absolutely support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Findura.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to give my voice to support. This is a very important piece of that recovery, or not just recovery, but the piece of our, like Councillor Hawkins mentioned about island. We are a great place to be. People want to come here. I think Mr. Bogus needs to be commended on his efforts and his steadfast 150, 200% of dedication to his, now he calls it home, Regina. And we need to support this. This is very important for us. Like he mentioned, Mr. Bogus mentioned that this is not just about people flying in and out of here. It's a community here. And so it's not straightforward. I mean, taxpayers, but we need to recognize that fact is that we need to spend some money to make some money. And that's the biggest thing. And this is something that is very important on any kind of goods are being moved. But having such a vibrant airport here, it grows our city. We don't have buses, rail, passenger rail not here, so we don't want to be left out. So I'm totally in support. I want to say thank you to the administration to working hard with the airport authority. I want to say thank you to the airport authority and the council to understanding the importance of what we are dealing with. And that's so, Mr. Chair, thank you very much for giving me the few minutes to say my piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Call the question on the report. Have a vote.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll begin with Councillor Hawkins, please.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
Opposed.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Mole.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani. Mayor Masters. Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
It's approved 9-1. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Masters, I did notice just at the tail end your light was blinking. I'm sorry. All right. As long as he heard me. Okay, all right. All right, next report, EX 21-43, Establishment of a Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Advisory Committee. We have several delegates. Is everyone online? Sorry, who was that? Okay, thank you.
Hi, Delapo speaking.
All right, perfect. If you could, for the record, state your name, who you represent, if any organization, and where you reside, please.
Okay, all right. Yeah, for sure. My name is Delapo Federe, representing Black in Saskatchewan. I'll call from Regina.
All right, so if I could, someone in the background has the stream on. If you could perhaps just mute that. And Delapo, whenever you're ready. Please go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just going to mute the stream in the background. Is it still feeding back?
If you could just solve the Sandra Schmerler problem.
Tarina, if you could please turn off your microphone, or whoever that was.
Yeah, my microphone is on.
Sorry, I can't recognize everyone's voices. All right, Delapo, go ahead. I don't hear any background noise there.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, members of City Council. My name is Delapo Federe, and I'm here as an executive member of Black in Saskatchewan. Although we are happy to see that steps have been taken towards carrying forward the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee, we are, however, dissatisfied by the context of this report and the process in which it was written. As presented to Council in the letter of dissatisfaction provided yesterday in Appendix A, Black in Sask has been one of the primary organizations that has been advocating and involved in the establishment of this committee. However, there is no mention of our organization's effort in the decision history of the report. In addition, some of the language we had from our initial report submitted on June 29th last year to former Mayor Michael Frigier. Some of that language was used in the report as well, but no reference, again, made to our organization. Secondly, in our previous conversation with Mayor Masters on April 9th, 2021, we were notified that the next steps would be consultations. It came to our shocking surprise that we were not consulted in the formation of this report and the terms of reference, and it is to my understanding that no other organization was also consulted. Providing that this report omitted consultations from community-based organizations is a prescriptive approach that does not consider the unique needs of Regina citizens or a community-led approach. And although the pandemic has made gathering a public health issue, in our last meeting again with Mayor Masters, we did express the willingness to assist the city with virtual consultations, not only with the Black community, but with multiple communities that would be needed to have their voices represented through consultations. As I continue here, the limited research as stated before, that is also in the appendices, shows that in comparison to other cities, Regina has a long way to go. And for the DEI committee purpose to be, and I quote from the report, position Regina as a model community for the inclusion of all residents. This is merely aspirational and not the reality for thousands of Regina citizens. And so our primary objective here today is to show and share that the terms of reference in this report actually veers off from the fundamental intent of this committee, which is to be proactive and responsive to tackling the root causes of racism and discrimination in the city of Regina. Right now, this report and terms of reference is more positioned as promoting and celebrating multiculturalism rather than addressing the focal points and the focal issues. My colleague will elaborate more on these inconsistencies when it comes to the terms of reference, as well as our ongoing stance with this report and the committee in question. I will now leave the rest of my time to both of my colleagues, Antimuna De Saman, as well as the CEO of Black and Sask, Jennifer Watting.
Thank you. So are all of you on the same call? No, separate? Okay.
No, they have their own numbers.
Okay. All right. So we'll treat each one independently then. The first question is from Councillor Zakidniak. Go ahead, Shannon.
Thank you. Thanks for coming today. My question is in relation to the terms of reference. I'll have to follow up with administration about how this might work, but what I'm wondering is if there was sort of like a draft terms of reference approved today with the goal that the committee would finalize any changes to the terms of reference, which would then have to be confirmed by council. Do you think, through the chair please, that would be an appropriate step forward? So we proceed with a terms of reference knowing that it's not, that it needs, that there's some issues that may need to be addressed, and the committee, when they meet, address those concerns and then send something back to council for approval.
Right now, our stance with that, and Jennifer will explain more, is that we see that it's best to address and trying to get it right the first time, then working retroactively to then adjust if there are gaps that do not align with not just our own community, but other communities that would be a part of this committee. So right now, we do not think that would be the best way forward, to first have this as a draft that is approved, rather having the draft written in collaboration with multiple CBOs like Black and Sask, and as well as other organizations.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the delegate? Right,
Councillor Stevens,
Sorry, who is that?
Sorry.
Oh, Lori,
Councillor
go ahead.
Bashani.
Go ahead, Lori.
Sorry, my power is out here. So this may die, I don't know, but, so Delapo, are you asking then that this be referred back for more consultation before this moves forward then? So more consultation with the groups for this terms of reference, is that what you're asking through the chair?
I just realized I was on mute, but yes, that is what we are asking, is to first have it revised before it moves forward.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Councillor Stevens, can I just ask that Amber call me on the side, because I'm having trouble, just in case. Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to work that out. And if anything comes up, just send me a text. I'll keep an eye out for that. All right. Dolapo, thank you very much. We'll have some opportunity to ask your colleagues who are going to be presenting as delegates, but I thank you for your time. You can leave the call, but I encourage you to stay tuned in.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you. Our next delegate is Muna Desima. Muna, whenever you're ready, you can identify yourself for the record, who you represent, and where you reside.
My name is Muna Desiman. I'm representing the Black in Sask group, and I reside in Regina, Saskatchewan.
Perfect. Go ahead, Muna.
Good morning to Her Worship, Mayor Sandra Masters, and council members. I'm here speaking on behalf of Black in Sask group. I would like to let you all know that the youth in this group had worked tirelessly with the encouragement from Councillor Bishiani to construct the Diversity Committee, which was passed unanimously by Council in 2020. The diversity committee that the Black in SARS group worked on was a very important committee that embraces equity and inclusion. It is important to hear and take into consideration all the countless hours these young people had invested in creating that committee, and they have the right to have been listened to and consulted when this present committee, which has been drafted. Why do we have to fix what is not broken? Black in SARS reached out to the city through the former mayor, Michael Fuje, and worked with Councillor Bishiani to create this committee, this document, with solutions on how diversity committee should look like and the one that works. I am very disappointed to see that, again, Black people's voice have been left out of the decision-making process, hence silencing us. The present document has no mention about the Truth and Reconciliation, racism, and how to address it. We felt we have not been listened to, and our voices don't matter. I will now hand over the meaning of our concern to Dalapo, who is one of the executives of the organization, and she will speak on our behalf. Thank you to our mayor and the rest of the council for listening to me.
Thank you, Muna. Just so you know, Dolapo just spoke, and the next speaker up will be Jennifer Wani.
Okay, yeah, Jennifer is one of our executives too. Thank you very much.
Just hang on, Muna. There might be questions for you. Any questions for Muna?
Okay.
I do have one, Muna. So
yes.
If the interest is changing the language, what would that language look like? So we could write it here, or we could refer it back. What would we refer it back in terms of the instructions that we provide administration, and who should be consulted if it goes back to the community for discussion?
Well, one of our disappointments is we were not even consulted when this document was created. Like the issue of Black in SARS was not mentioned, the issue of Black on how to address racism, which we all know is paramount in this Regina. Okay, it's right in our backyard. So if this document is returned back to the committee, I am asking on behalf of the group for us to be consulted. You have the brain right there. You have Jennifer, you have Dalapo, you have Vivian, and you have myself. We are not saying we have all the answers, but we can help. We gave you the problem, and we gave you solutions on how to address this issue that is impacting the Black community. So if this document goes back to the committee, we are asking for us to be consulted to help whoever is working on this committee to come with a very proper documentation that is agreeable to all members.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, would it be fair to say that you want explicit language around the anti-racism mandate of this committee? Would that be fair to say? You want that written into the terms?
Yeah, anti-racism, microaggression, and the issue is we are just totally left out. We are not even consulted. So that's the issue. Gone are those days where people will do things on our behalf, but we have the resources in our community. We have the brain to address our own issues that is impacting us. So I'm okay with what you are suggesting.
Okay, thank you. So our next speaker, if there's no more questions, Muna, thank you very much. You may leave the call, but I encourage you to continue listening.
You have a blessed day.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can I go off the air now?
Yes, you can, Muna.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jennifer Wani.
Hello?
Hi, Jennifer. If you could, just identify yourself for the record, who you represent, and where you reside.
Okay. Hello, my name is Jennifer Wani. I'm here today representing Black in Saskatchewan, and I reside in Regina, Saskatchewan.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you, City Council, for having us this morning. During my designated time in this meeting, I will be examining Appendix A of the proposed document. Initially, on behalf of the organization, I was prepared to propose amendments. However, after speaking with members of Black and South, we believe it is best to make known points of concerns rather than amendments, understanding that Black and South was not officially included in the formation of the document, but initially proposed it to Council. And we believe that this document should be referred back as opposed to amendments being made now. Point of concern number 1 that we found was outlined within Appendix A, Section 2, which outlines the purpose of the committee. There is no mention of addressing racism, discrimination, or prejudice within the city. It is important that the advisory committee is not only committed to diversity and inclusion, but in addition aims towards dismantling discrimination and racism. Furthermore, points of concern too can be found within the terms of reference. Similar concern when advising City Council and administration on policy matters related. We believe that the committee should also advise on policy matters relating to addressing racism, discrimination, and prejudice within the city of Regina. Further, within the terms of reference, we also believe that there should be the ability for the committees to formulate task force to address specified issues. For example, anti-Black racism, addressing community emergencies, and also a committee dedicated to the implementation of truth and reconciliation recommendations that the city can adopt. Moving forward to our point of concern found within the composition section, which is Appendix A, Section 5. After great review and conversation with fellow members of Black and Sask and looking over the composition of the committee, we suggest and propose that the entire section be completely revisited. Our point of concern number 1 lies, there are no mention of Black representatives. When discussing groups that the Council hopes to connect with through this committee, throughout the entire document, I quote, in the purpose that outlines Black, Indigenous, visible minority, two-spirited, LGBTQIA+, newcomer youth, and age communities. Each group identified is reserved a seat on the committee except for the Black identity, an obvious exclusion. It is disappointing to see that the Black identity is identified in the purpose, but not the carrying out of the purpose, a major flaw we identified in the document. Furthermore, the Open Door Society and Multicultural Council is specified as designated organizations for space on the committee. In our initial meeting with City Council, we communicated how no one organization ultimately represents the needs of all our communities. Hence why we believe 2 seats should be designated to any 2 community-based organizations that align with the purpose of this community. This allows for the maximization of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Given the fact that this committee was initially proposed by Black and South with the key elements that the true nature of this committee is to be anti-racist and anti-discrimination, knowing that it is simply not enough to only promote diversity, it is imperative and necessary this committee and council dismantle barriers that threaten the safety and well-being of our communities. Not only am I here speaking today as the community leader, but also as a concerned citizen. I can say that Black and South is a powerful group of young leaders, youth, who are hopeful for meaningful change for all and continually strive for it. To know that although we proposed this document, we received notice of this meeting less than 72 hours ago. When our city puts out initiatives like Be Heard Regina, but only hears us selectively, it is nothing short of disheartening. In conclusion, this report should not move forward as is. Instead, the document should be revisited and revised in hopes that Black and South will be a part of the process of formulating this committee, and further, that other community-based organizations are also invited to be a part of the process to ensure proper and meaningful consultations. Appendix B offers limited research that still remains unreflective of the needs of our communities in Regina. The Council needs to further engage with us and our fellow community leaders and members to genuinely reflect what it means to execute an intersectional, culturally responsive, and community-based approach to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any questions from committee?
Councillor Stevens, it's Councillor Bresciani. I cannot get in the chat.
That's okay. Go ahead, Lori.
Thank you so much for speaking today. I have another question. Jennifer, would it be I guess I'm suggesting that I would like to still bring an amendment to have Black and Sask added to the terms of reference as in committee members, and then consultation as a referral back. I just would like to know your thoughts on that through the chair.
Sorry, just to clarify, so designating 2 seats to Black and Sask, and then also still moving forward with the document today?
No, and then referring it back for more consultation through the chair.
Yes, I believe that it should be referred back for more consultation, and while hopefully at the end of that consultation 2 seats be reserved for Black and Sask, I believe the composition portion has more issues beyond whether or not we have 2 seats being represented. I think what needs to happen is my organization alongside other organizations sit down and create a composition that is reflective of all our needs and is continually inclusive and reflects the needs of this committee.
Okay, so just to be clear then, your organization would be fine with it just being referred back for more consultation and that discussion without having the Black and Sask added today, and it just go to further discussion.
Yes, it should go to further discussion.
Okay. That's all I have, Councillor Stevens.
Thanks, Laurie.
Thank you.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer, I don't know if this would have been a question that would have been better for Dolapo, but in your presentation, in the presentation from Black and Sask, there is a mention in point 4 about the composition of the committee. It states the composition of the committee does not account for the intersectionality of potential applicants to the committee. And I'm just sort of wondering if that is something that you can comment on a little bit more about the importance of having an intersectional approach, that people have different identities. You could be Black and a woman, you can be disabled and an older person, and so forth. Is that something that you can comment on about why you think that's important?
Thank you for your question, Council Member. I would like to discuss whether or not I can yield this question to Dolapo and add her to the call.
Not at this time, sorry.
That's fine then. What I will do then is just ask you if you could, I'm not sure if I understood the point that you were making, so through the chair I'm asking if you could talk about your concerns about having a representative from the Regina Multicultural Council and the Open Doors Society, because you were stating that because they are organizations, but Black and Sask is an organization as well. So could you just clarify that so I can understand your point on that?
Thank you. First, my addition of Black and Sask being represented, I never mentioned having them represented clearly on the composition portion. I said Black representatives as a whole. Second, while we recognize the work that Open Door Society and the Multicultural Council does, and we also believe that they should, given the opportunity, they should also be a part of this committee at some point, we do recognize that other organizations should also be given the opportunity to be a part of this committee. So what we are suggesting here that 2 seats be designated to community-based organizations so that it is open to more than just the Open Door Society and the Multicultural Council.
Okay, thank you very much. That clarifies a lot. And the concerns, I think you articulated it really well. The concerns about the terms of reference in terms of what you believe this advisory committee should be able to address. And
questions, please.
Sorry, and that is the in terms of anti-racism and anti-oppression. So you think that needs to be in the terms of reference quite clearly?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. There's no more questions.
Perfect.
And thank you for
Thank you for your question.
Thanks, Jennifer. Other questions from committee? Seeing none. Jennifer, thank you very much for your contribution. I encourage you to stay on the call. We're now going to move into discussing the report. So you can leave now, but please listen in. All right, so I'll ask the city clerk to introduce the report, and then I'll ask for a mover. Mr. Nickel.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So this report that is before you is in response to a motion that was made at Council in the latter part of 2020 respecting the establishment of a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee. It was approved in principle subject to a number of conditions which are outlined on page 4 in the decision history. As explained in the report, there were a number of challenges that we've had, not only in terms of some of the other issues that have arisen before the city, but with the restrictions on the pandemic. Having said that, the attempt was made to provide members of council with an intermunicipal comparison of what other major jurisdictions do with respect to this. And as is evident in Appendix B, there is a multitude of approaches with respect to what they look at, the names of and titles of the committees, their memberships, etc. What we attempted to do here, and this is the common practice, is we write advisory committee terms of reference in a relatively standard format, which talks about authority, purpose, terms of reference, etc. I was the primary author of this, so I will take responsibility for deficiencies at this point in time. The terms of reference are designed to be as broad as possible, and they are broad in the sense that we believe that a lot of these issues, for example, notwithstanding the fact that if the committee wishes to change the terms of reference to include anti-racism, prejudice, etc., those can certainly be added. But we felt that the terms of reference, as outlined in 3A, B, and C, are broad enough that the committee would be able to provide that direction if and when it was appropriate. With respect to the composition, I will say, perhaps in hindsight, it was a serious oversight not to designate 2 members of Black in Sask along with the other groups, or 1. Having said that, it's very difficult to put together a committee. What we're trying to do is establish a committee that's representative of the community, but also not so large and unwieldy that we can't get anything done. That is a major challenge. 15 members, including 13 voting members. I would respectfully add that on the basis of my experience, that is approaching a very difficult level to get consensus and move things forward. But that is just my personal advice from where I sit. That would be up to the committee. So what I can say is that this was presented to Executive Committee. It's a first draft of this Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee. We did something similar with respect to the Community Wellness Committee, where then we drafted some terms of reference, the committee looked at them, and then passed it on to Council. This is certainly Council's prerogative now. As I explained in a question to a member of Council yesterday, you can make specific amendments to add, subtract, or revise the terms of reference, or as has been suggested earlier, you can refer this back to administration for further work as you direct.
Okay, thank you. If there is an interest in amending the report, I would recommend that you type that up now and send to Amber. If there's interest in referring this back, I would ask members of committee to be as specific and as prescriptive as possible to give administration some clear guidance. Councillor Bresciani, I understand your phone is running out. I'll ask that you move this report, and I'll give you the first shot at asking questions. Go ahead, Councillor Bresciani, if you're still on the line.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. I will move the report. just a couple of things I guess I want to reiterate. And I think we as a council all agree that this short time frame for allowing the information to go out on Friday and delegations have to speak on Monday is an absolute detriment, I think, to the work that we're doing on council. And it was through a connection that I had made with the committee to ensure they knew. But the point is that people need more time than this, and I hope that this is something that eventually we are going to get hammered out, because at the end of the day, we want to have people attend. The second piece here is we heard from the speakers, and I apologize, in and out with my phone, and the power is still out here. The concern is that there was a discussion. Number one, that this was approved by council. Number one, that this committee was going to go forward in August before the new council came on board. So it was approved, I guess, in principle. But as we move forward, I think it is imperative that we do consultation. When Mayor Masters and I did meet with the group, that was part of the discussion, that we were going to reach out to the other organizations and do some consultation. So I guess I would suggest, and I can refer it back, but if there are others, Councillor Stevens, that want to make amendments or have a discussion before I refer it, because I think then once it's referred, it's just voted on. Is that accurate?
That's right. We'll consider your statement there a notice that you wish to refer it, but I'll still hand it over to committee to speak, and we can come back to that if they so choose.
Okay, go ahead then.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shaw. Go ahead, Trina.
Sorry, just clicking in buttons.
Trina, if you're a bit choppy. Perhaps you could turn off your video and just have the sound on?
Yeah, I think we're having problems with the internet here. I've been kicked out a few times. I want to stress the fact here that obviously I've stepped into this and this is all new to me. I didn't have the past history of this, but we talk about two visible minority people from the community. What is a visible minority? What would you consider a visible minority, through the chair?
Yeah, we'll ask the clerk how it's considered typically by the city.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. To your question, Councillor Shaw, your question points out the obvious challenge that we have. The term visible minorities was largely taken from what is typically found in Human Rights Commission findings in terms of the percentage of employees that are working for a particular organization. But I think I believe it's fraught with challenges. I mean, to be particularly candid, I believe that the common accepted notion of a visible minority is somebody perhaps from East Asia, India, Pakistan, perhaps Africa. But again, I'm not sure if there's any one definition of that, and therein lies some of the challenges that we face here. Do we start specifying specific communities here in Regina or not? I mean, that's certainly something that we can do pending the direction of council. But you have pinpointed one of the challenges that we face.
So further question to that, I'm seeing here, First Nations community, Métis community, LGBTQ, visible minority, open door society. So we're including a lot of race and ethnicity, but I don't see anybody here, and I don't clarify for people with disabilities. And why I'm going there with this is people with disabilities get left out on numerous occasions, and I use the example that we just got, that the accessible mat at the Regina Beach now, so people with wheelchairs can access the lake. Now, living in a life of having a person with a disability, she was able to get to the lake, but can you imagine if we told an Indigenous person they can't go in the lake? Now, that is what people with disabilities have been told, reassured for all of their life, up until hopefully now we as a city can change this. So I would like to see some people with disabilities a space, a seat at the table for them, so they can express the things that they have. There's no access for them at all in this city, nor are they given or are they allowed access to certain things that we take for granted. Is this something that we can add to it? Can we amend this? Can we add this through the chair, please?
Just hang on, Jim. First, I believe Ms. Folk wanted to say something about how we make sense of visible minority through the applications. Go ahead.
Through you, Councillor Stevens. So when we look at the definition of a visible minority, we often refer
Hang on, Louise.
Yeah.
Whoever's, can you please mute your microphones, please? All right, go ahead.
Absolutely.
All right. Can we just mute that microphone, whoever's is on? There, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Stevens, through yourself. When we look at definition of visible minority, we often refer back to the Employment Equity Act, and we start with the federal legislation. So under the guidance of the Government of Canada, they define a visible minority as a person who belongs to a visible minority group as defined by the Employment Equity Act. If so, the visible minority group to which the person belongs. So that definition excludes includes persons other than Aboriginal peoples who are non-Caucasian in race or non-white in color. The visible minority population consists mainly of the following groups within Canada, and this is what they've included at this time: South Asian, Chinese, Black, Filipino, Latin American, Arab, Southeast Asian, West Asian, Korean, and Japanese.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Nicol also wanted to add to that. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So with respect to your question, Councillor Shaw, with regarding the inclusion of a disabled person on the committee, that would be something that certainly could be done by way of amendment. We do have the Accessibility Advisory Committee, which was initially or continues to be focused on accessibility issues. And I realize that accessibility crosses over into inclusion, et cetera, et cetera. Again, just to point it out for the benefit of those trying to understand this, of which I'm one of them, if the committee starts to focus on racism and anti-prejudice, for example, to what extent does that then take away from accessibility and disabled issues? Like, if you put everything under one umbrella, it gets very difficult to determine where a consensus is. Conversely, I also can appreciate where there's feelings that people feel that they aren't part of a broader committee. But at this point in time, it was an intentional omission in the sense that we do have the Accessibility Advisory Committee that continues to work and provide advice to Council. But again, it is Council's prerogative to amend this accordingly.
And thank you for that explanation, and that does make a lot of sense since I'm on the board. I just feel that having a seat at the table from everybody soon makes people realize the challenges that everybody faces. And what I find in society is, so the Black people don't understand what the Indigenous people face. The Indigenous people don't understand what the LGBTQ faces. The LGBTQ doesn't understand what the people with disabilities face. So having everybody at a seat at that table, I feel would be such a powerful education piece to our city, so everybody can feel what it's like and know what it's like to have any type of visible minority. So I sent an email to Amanda, or to Amber, sorry. I would like a seat at the table. I would like that to be included, amended and included in this diverse, inclusive and advisory committee. If that is, I think, sorry, is that fine?
So
Yeah.
Tarina,
okay.
Yeah. I've been compiling a list of groups and organizations and identities that people have referenced. What we can do is go through the speakers list. To be frank, and this is just a recommendation, I think the best approach would be to refer it back rather than tinkering with it on the floor. So
Okay.
what I would ask is, thank you for sending the amendment. Perhaps we can go through the speakers list and we can see where we're at in terms of how people want to proceed. And if you wish to amend it, we can come back to you for sure, but I have a feeling this is going to be referred back.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I'll be sure to check in with you, though.
Thanks.
Councillor Zakidniak.
Thank you. So let's see, where do I start here? I do, Councillor Bashiani had indicated the desire to proceed with a referral motion. I am supportive of that. My first question to administration is how, well, actually before that, some of the points that were brought up by Black and Sask, I think are points that should be considered if this is successful in getting referred back, such as including focus on anti-racism and tackling the root causes of these issues as part of the terms of reference. And as Black and Sask had indicated, and also others, councillors as well, I do think that there's some concerns about whether the composition of the committee is sufficient. Not saying necessarily that we need to add more numbers, but there were points made about the intersectionality where that we could have a person who, fits multiple categories. So perhaps instead of continuing to grow numbers, we're looking for community members that best represent a variety of target groups that we'd like to get involved. And then as a specific point, I think it's potentially problematic when we talk about having two members of a specific community and then only one of another. So for example, the gender and sexually diverse community currently only has one representative. Is that appropriate? Is that enough? That's not really, I think that question is best answered in consultation with folks. So that preamble is just to ask if these are some of the issues that administration is asked to consult regarding. Can someone from administration give a sense of how quickly they think that they could do a consultation to address some of the concerns that are brought forward, keeping in mind that it's important that we get started with this work as expediently as we can at the same time.
So what's the time frame? All right, Mr. Nicol.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Well, if the committee does refer this, my office will work closely with Ms. Folk's office to come up with an engagement plan with various community groups. Having said that, the practicality of it is the summer. There are a number of groups that we have to be consulted, and with the variety and multitude of opinions and perspectives on this, it is going to take some time. I don't think this is going to be a one-week exercise to come up with something. Having said that, my view is that we would look to bring something back in September to coincide with the annual advertisement for various positions on boards and committees of council. So I think off the top of my head, we would shoot for trying to get this consultation underway and completed by early September so that we could then come back and hopefully coincide this with the annual, or shortly thereafter, the annual advertisement for public appointments.
Okay, wonderful. That's what I was hoping to hear. Thank you.
Mayor Masters.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification, there's something said by one of the delegates, administration, maybe Mr. City Clerk. Did we have a diversity committee before?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. To my knowledge, there has not been a diversity committee before. Just to remind members of council, particularly those that are new, in previous years we had a number of advisory committees. And over time, largely due to either issues, challenges, multitude of members, etc., inability to attend, over time, those became less and less functional and constructive. So a decision was made approximately 2 or 3 years ago. We disbanded all the advisory committees of council with the exception of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And then as I mentioned earlier, in August of 2020, there was the discussion of a motion and an approval in principle that the previous council directed that we investigate this and come back with a report.
Thank you. Looking at the previous council's motion, what you presented today in terms of establishing the committee, you haven't set out to define or determine the mandate, goals, and objectives of the committee.
Can you just, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
can you just repeat that?
Well, you've established a committee, the framework for an advisory committee, but you haven't undertaken to determine the mandate, goals, and objectives of the committee, have you?
No, I think that's fair, Mayor. What we strive to do is write down the terms of reference. And as we did with the terms of reference that were recently approved for the Community Wellness Committee, we follow the standard format, the way these are written for the legal purposes of the committee bylaw. But clearly, council has its input into the mandate. If this committee was approved and appointments were made, clearly, if there were serious deficiencies in the mandate, the objectives, the goals, etc., the committee could make a report through to the Community Wellness Committee, which would then come back to council and say, we think this is missing the mark for these reasons, because it's ultimately council has to approve any changes to the committee bylaw.
Thank you. And Ms. Spoke, if I kind of was listening appropriately, the Employment Equity Act, there are 10 groups according to kind of legislation. There are 10 groups who comprise visible minorities, if I'm counting correctly. Okay, so in terms of engagement, we're looking at 10 groups.
From the visible minority community, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Mr. Chair.
Councillor Zakidniak, go ahead.
She spoke.
I think it's that.
Cheryl, go ahead.
You mean Councillor Stadnichuk?
So, I'm sorry, I'm reading my screen wrong here. Whoever's mic is on, go ahead.
Okay, it's Councillor Stadnichuk here. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I wanted some clarification, and it's kind of a follow-up from Councillor Shaw's question. So she asked about the disability, the people with disabilities, but I also have a question. I'm wondering the overlap of the different organizations and groups that we work with. So there's 2 citizen representatives over the age of 55 years. And we do have there is Age-Friendly Regina. So I'm trying to understand why I'm just trying to understand the composition overall, because I'm not sure about the age categories, and I'm wondering if that could be explained in terms of what the thinking was there, and if there is overlap with Age-Friendly Regina.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. To your question, Councillor Stadnichuk, first of all, I'll say this is more art than science in terms of trying to define the membership. With respect to the age of 55, and in fairness, I did have a discussion yesterday with another member of council, that certainly could be changed to be a representative of Age-Friendly Regina, for example. I just picked 55 because there seems to be a very moving target in the community at large as to what defines a senior. It used to be 65, and then it's 60, and it's 55 if you go to Shoppers Drug Mart. I mean, I'm just trying to say that that's where 55 came from, but I think it's also, it would be appropriate perhaps to designate that as a member of Age-Friendly Regina. The respecting nomination of people between 16 and 23 was essentially to capture the youth of the city. Previously, there had been a youth advisory committee of council, and that was one of those committees that really fell into disuse because of lack of interest and attendance. So without replicating a youth advisory committee, I just arbitrarily looked at looked at that component and thought that perhaps 16 to 23 was the appropriate age representative. But again, I also want to state, in fairness, there is nothing magical about whether there's 13 members or 15, or if it's one citizen rep from one group or two. They can all be one representative if council directs that. It can be two from each group if council directs that. This was meant to stoke the discussion and come up with a leading practice in this regard.
Okay, thank you for that. I do. I would like to see some changes to this, and I don't want to be making any amendments because I would like some more thought given to exactly who this should include, which organizations or which groups in our community this needs to cover, and what the terms of reference, what the purpose of the committee would be. So I'm not going to speak on anything specific, but just that I would like to see some changes to this and some more consultation. Thank you.
Councillor Shaw?
So I come up with a genius idea, and I understand, and this is so tricky. I get it. I really do. It almost seems like, why don't we just have one committee for every minority and visible minority within the city of Regina? Has that ever been talked about, to have one committee instead of accessibility committee, an older people committee, race committee? Has that been a discussion through the chair?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That specific option, I don't believe has ever been discussed, at least in any great detail, Councillor Shaw. That doesn't mean it's not without merit, but it does beg the obvious observation that we might be running into tens of different committees. It puts a lot of onus and staff time, and then it starts to, the interested issues become so dissected that at some point, I'm not sure to the level of constructive input that they have. Having said that, again, it might be something that if the advisory committee is approved, or it is something that the Community Wellness Committee of Council, perhaps because that's where this advisory committee would report, it could perhaps suggest that task force be, like a mini subcommittee. But again, this is going to run the risk of becoming incredibly bureaucratic, and things are going to get bogged down, and usually that is the major criticism of advisory committees, that ultimately their perspectives, thoughts, and any recommendations and advice just get lost in the bureaucratic shuffle. And it's not because administration is being unduly difficult, it's just that things grind to a halt because there's so many voices throwing their input into it that it starts to strangle itself. But that's not an excuse not to do something. I'm just pointing out the challenges.
Yeah, and I think what I was thinking more along the lines, I'm not sure if I got my point across, is instead of all these committees, because we all get committed out, is having one committee that engages everybody of minority in that one committee, so that everybody can discuss at that one committee the problems. So we have, that's kind of where I was going with it, instead of having 3 different committees or 4 different committees, having one committee, everybody having the discussion and a seat at the table to discuss all of the differences and all of the problems, I guess, they would face, and all of the concerns that they have. Everybody talking together. With that's kind of where I was going with it. Has that ever been discussed?
Mr. Nicol.
With respect to that, Councillor Shaw, I think that is one of the underlying intentions of this advisory committee, that it would be, as I said, the terms of reference as they were written were very broad, in keeping that it could deal with a broad variety of issues and challenges of the day. This advisory committee would be getting together from the broader community, and it would provide input, advice, perspective on through to the Community Wellness Committee of Council. So in that way, I believe it was intentionally designed to provide that kind of all-in-one-stop committee hearing so that council could then have it come through the Community Wellness Committee, which itself has a broad mandate to look at all aspects of community wellness, of which the component parts of this advisory committee are very important.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm just trying to get an understanding of this, and it's just difficult kind of walking into it when I don't have the history behind this. So thank you for that. That's all I have.
Thank you. I'm going to try and steer this to a conclusion. We have a referral motion on the floor. There is no debate on it, but I'm going to list through some of the issues I've heard. So if this is referred back to administration for further discussion, it would involve conversations with Black and Sask, newcomer agencies and other community-based organizations, consultation over the terms of reference, language specific to anti-racism and discrimination, representatives from the sexually diverse community, those with disabilities, and age-friendly Regina. So simply, we just need a referral to take it back to administration for further consultation, and the return date would be September. Okay. There's no debate on this motion, but I did miss you, John. If you could go ahead, Councillor Findura.
Okay, there's a lot of, looks like computer issues here. Quick question to Mr. Chair, to our clerk, is I believe when the discussion came to about committee, how committee work, what the terms of reference of the committees are, how much influence, or because the committees usually report, committees are extension of a council. I believe there was a discussion before. I just want to put that to Mr. Nicol to see if I'm remembering this correctly. We, as the city, discussed the idea of not having committees, by having a call in a specific issue in a community. You call in the community for 1 or 2 meetings or 3 meetings to figure out what's going on. I'm not sure if I'm describing this correctly, Mr. Clerk. To Mr. Chair, if I can get a comment, please.
Consultation.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Findura, for that question. You're correct. In the past discussions that council members had on this, the previous council, there was a suggestion from at least 1 or 2 members at that time that instead of immediately jumping to the establishment of a committee, that council itself, and I'll use this term, go on a listening tour. And that was designed to say, okay, council perhaps would have town hall meetings, and they would go perhaps to each ward as an example. Or they could say, today we are holding a town hall meeting to discuss anti-racism, or to discuss diversity hiring on specific issues or to specific communities. So that did not progress any further, Councillor Findura, but you're correct that there was a notion that perhaps just engaging with the broad community and its component parts in a listening tour might be a better first step than establishing an advisory committee.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Chair. So I'm not sure if we, referring it back, if we could maybe a little friendly undertaking to maybe explore that a little bit. I'm not sure if that's something maybe the council can think about. I would just ask a friendly undertaking, maybe explore that idea. I'm not suggesting we do not establish an advisory, which the purpose of it, as long as it's in the right direction. As I'm hearing, there's a lot of who's going to be on that and how's that going to go, what not influence, but what help that's going to be to council to make the decision. So maybe if I could suggest that, just to have a little friendly undertaking to explore that maybe a little bit.
So
that's just, Mr. Chair, I'll leave it up to you.
All right. So just replacing a committee with a Be Heard tool is a bit out of order. However, the clerk has agreed to talk about the approach of consultation in this process. So absolutely, the remark has been heard and will be considered by administration.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we could get the referral motion up. It's a bit of a dog's breakfast that just read out, but we'll see what we can make of it. Looks like my desktop. You need at least a dozen items open. So I would say that it's Councillor Bresciani who moved it initially.
If you're looking for a seconder, I'll second that.
Okay, we don't need a seconder, but thank you, John. I believe everyone can see the document, is that correct? I believe people with disabilities should be referenced in there. And again, this is for consideration by administration, and it might be a response that there are other venues for this to be discussed, but nonetheless, we can put that in there as a consideration. I believe there was also mention of the sexually diverse community.
Can I just provide a clarification?
Please, yeah, go ahead, Jim.
So, thank you, Council. Just for clarification, my understanding of where Council was going with this was that the referral would be back to us to conduct further consultation respecting the proposed terms of reference, including membership. It's not that the consultation is necessarily with some of these, it's with everybody. It's not just with these agencies. These were the ones that are being listed here that were being suggested that would be potentially, well, we should perhaps add that to the membership and be specific about it. I'm just saying, I believe I understand where this referral is coming, is what its intent is. So the community-based organizations, the consultation will be widespread. So I'm not sure that we need to list these because inevitably, if we list them, we're going to miss somebody.
Yeah, so there's a bit of a note there.
I agree with
well
that.
taken.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you won't be faulted if you don't talk to the 1,000 organizations in the city. Yeah. Okay. So it's not debatable, however, it's a bit of a moving target here. I will call the question on this referral. This will come back for discussion. This is an open period for consultation as well with councillors. So if I could ask for the vote on the referral motion, please.
Thank you. I'll call on Councillor Bresciani first, please.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Mole.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Councillor Hawkins.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Carries 11-0, Deputy Mayor.
Okay. Report is referred. That was item 2 of 8 for today's agenda. Just keep a mind on time. If administration has items that we do absolutely need to clear for public or private agenda, if you perhaps just want to put those reports or an indication of it on my desk here. Next item, EX 21-44, Canada Centre Recreation Hub. We have 3 delegates. Who's up first? I have Wayne Morski. All right, perfect. We've got the real team.
In favor.
Okay, so we have the table over at Real, if you will. If you could just identify yourself for the record, who you represent and where you reside. Obviously, they're in Regina.
Good morning. My name is Wayne Morski, and I have the privilege of speaking to you today on behalf of the entire Board of Directors of the Regina Exhibition Association Limited, also known as REAL. I'd also like to mention that we are in the middle of our first virtual Canadian Farm Show, where we have over 1,000 global delegates registered from 50 nations, and we just checked the online viewing. We're just touching 10,000 viewers. So our city of Regina is certainly being recognized around the world globally with agriculture right now. I'd like to thank Council and Administration for affording this opportunity to share a conversation with you today. I'm joined here today by Sandra Jackal, our Vice President of Corporate Development, and Mr. Tim Reed, our President and CEO of REAL. So as you know, REAL is a not-for-profit municipal corporation owned solely by yourself as the City of Regina. We are in the business of bringing people together, where we are celebrating moments and memories, and making Regina the very best place to live, work, and play. The past year has been challenging for the entire globe, and particularly difficult on industries that depend on travel, public gatherings, and large events. As an organization, we were in a fortunate position that prior to the challenges of COVID-19, we had a clear path forward endorsed by yourself in the REAL 2.0 strategic plan. We have stayed true to our strategic plan throughout the course of COVID, and with each car that passes through the vaccination clinic on our campus, we see opportunity, positivity, and potentially for a brilliant future. We have continued to advance the strategic principles within our plan, and our presentation today will highlight a number of aligned opportunities. Over the course of the past year, we have been working closely with your administration to support for the current and future needs of our community and build plans for a brighter, bolder, and more sustainable future of our business. In our REAL 2.0 strategic plan, we highlighted a number of aging assets in our campus, and today we have to discuss an opportunity to rejuvenate the Canadian Centre while concurrently maintaining the valuable space for large gatherings, agricultural events, and large train shows. Next slide, please.
Mr. Chair, we just have to double check that they're sharing it from the city's perspective.
No. I'm sorry, no, you folks have control over it? Yeah. We have been listening, though.
Okay.
The pictures were really great, Mr. Chair. We just need access to be able to share it. We're locked out of that right now, Mr. Chair.
I'm told you have access to that.
I've joined, but it says that they have to allow me into the meeting. If you could let Sandra Jackal into the meeting.
Sorry, we might be on the wrong computer then.
Apologies for the confusion.
No worries.
We're going to get this figured right in time to be done with COVID.
There you go.
Okay, hang on,
I think we're able to share now.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, we're on slide number 2.
Just 1 second, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Just getting it synced up.
Sure.
Okay. Good. Okay, thank you. We are open. When we opened the International Trade Center, also known as the ITC, we probably never imagined that it would become the backbone in our fight against COVID-19. But after tens of thousands of tests and tens of thousands of vaccinations, we have once again been reminded of the impact of this valuable civic investment. When we opened the ITC, we celebrated this wonderful world-class large event space, and since opening it, it has hosted hundreds of events, plus the Memorial Cup, the Briar, and some of the best trade shows in our city. And of course, we've maintained the premier agricultural events in Canada, that being the Canadian Western Agrivision and the Canadian Farm Show. What we failed to fully appreciate was that it connected by one simple hall of 140,000 square feet of opportunity in the Canada Centre. As you can see from these images, the ITC is spectacular, it's modern, it's inviting, and it's welcoming. It truly defines the spirit of our community as we invite guests local and abroad to experience Regina. Directly to the west is a proven, tested, and fully paid opportunity that now more than ever is showing its age in the Canada Centre. With this said, COVID-19 highlighted the valuable need within our community for flexibility, multi-purpose space, and the Canadian Centre once again responded.
The Canada Centre was built in 1983. With a construction cost of about $6 million, it generated over 125,000 square feet of mixed-use, wide-span space. It additionally has about 15,000 square feet of tenant space and offices. Historically, it's been the hub of trade shows, consumer business, Canada's Farm Show, Canadian Western Agribition, and any other event that our city can create. With that being said, the operations at the Canada's Farm, at the Canada Centre today, operates about 22 weeks a year, generating significant opportunity and opportunity loss with a large building that sits empty for more than 50% of its operations. It's a building that can accommodate large displays, large vehicles, large machinery, many mixed opportunities in that facility. But currently, it sits empty for about 30 weeks of the year. City administration was approached by two organizations looking for space through COVID-19. One, as we've heard often, the pickleball community is desperate to find indoor locations so that they can play, one of the fastest growing sports in North America. In addition to that, when the decision was made to develop Mosaic Stadium, it took away a home for the skateboard community that was lost and has not been replaced. After exploring a number of options throughout the city, we met with city administration to talk about the potential of using the Canada Centre in the off weeks when it was not in use for trade shows and major events. We also saw an opportunity to meet additional recreational needs within the recreational master plan at the City of Regina related to indoor court sport. What does the opportunity look like, and what are we presenting today? The opportunity is about modernizing an aged asset that is not well utilized today. Large facilities are not designed to sit empty 60% of the year. They cost the taxpayer, they're an opportunity loss for participation, and ultimately, they don't create activated and safe spaces. With a modest investment, we believe there's an opportunity to turn the Canada Centre into something that is beyond 50% utilization, but is a year-round utilization that combines sport, recreation, trade shows, and events. Building a new facility of this size would cost somewhere between $20 and $30 million to the taxpayers, but we have an opportunity to do that for a fraction of the cost. There's a short-term investment, an immediate impact, and most importantly, the ability to augment utilization, financial performance, and lifestyles in our community. So what does the Canada Centre look like today? Well, this is the Canada Centre. Most of us probably haven't been in it for a long time because it's generally a fairly scary place to be unless it's programmed with a trade show or an event. Most of us, however, have driven around it as we went to get vaccinated and to stick it to COVID, but it's a large building that sits on the west side of our campus. You'll notice in the images that it is an aged infrastructure, but it's still a great building. In 2019, we completed a Stantec report. In conjunction with this, we did an assessment of the value of the facility. Current value projected by Colliers is about $8.5 million on that building. In terms of the investment that will be needed in the next 5 years, there's about $900,000 in deferred maintenance on that asset. There's an overview of what's needed, and the detailed Stantec report can be provided at any time, but much of it's aesthetics. It's just an old, tired building that has been working for us since the mid-'80s and continues to drive value, but not nearly as much value as it once did. What we're proposing is we're proposing an approach that blends private and public investment. Phase one of the strategy was the investment in the volley barn, which opened during COVID-19 and was invested in by a private operator. Phase two is the pickle barn. You're going to notice a barn theme going on here because we want to be clear that it is reusing an old facility. This is underway currently. It's a private investor on a long-term lease that will have 12 pickleball courts that will be open to the public. We're additionally working with your administration and the skateboard community to create the skate barn, an opportunity to replace what was lost with the development with Mosaic Stadium. We're additionally looking at the opportunity for the court barn, mixed-use courts, everything from volleyball to basketball to tennis to badminton, and then the upgrade of reception and concessions, and then ultimately the improvement of the exterior of the building.
The Canada Centre Hub will have a significant impact on the quality of life for the City of Regina residents and recreational sport users. First, it will meet a community need through the support of court sport access, replacing skateboard infrastructure, and developing pickleball indoor space. Second, we'll see maximized utilization of civic assets, for example, 30 weeks of average program growth. It will also enhance event hosting and sport tourism portfolio through new amateur sport tourism venue. It will re-energize the neighborhood and create a safe space through inclusive, affordable, and accessible space for all users. We'll also see greater activation on campus with an additional 200,000 site visits. It will also be a sustainable model for future success with recreational space growth and an additional 350,000 on our annual P&L line. Next, you'll see the phasing. So you'll see that we've got Canada Central West, Central, East, South, and the exhibit hall. And I'll go through these more in detail. Phase 1 is complete. We call this our Volley Barn. Here you'll see that we have I Can Play Sports Management Inc. taking over private investment of about $150,000, which is ongoing maintenance as well. They have average utilization of about 30 weeks, 44,000 annual visitors, and the annual revenue for their lease is $33,000. This is an action shot of the girls playing volleyball currently. Next, we've got phase 2, which is the pickle barn, which is in completion now. We've got private investment of about $150,000 and ongoing maintenance, such as sport court resurfacing. Average utilization of about 30 weeks, over 37,000 average guests, and an annual revenue of $113,000. This is an image of what the pickle barn could look like. On the right, you'll see that this is what the pickleball courts are being installed. So you'll see that there's 12 courts there, and they'll be finishing up with installing netting as well. Next, we've got the skate barn. Skate park is going to be about 15,000 square feet. We're asking for a public investment of $150,000 over 2 years. Average utilization will be about that 30-week span with 31,000 guests annually visiting. Annual revenue will be about $75,000. Here's a view of what the skate barn could look like. Next, we've got the court barn. And the court barn could be accessed with not only basketball users, but volleyball, tennis, anyone that wants to use a sport court, maybe even dodgeball. We're asking for public investment here of $1.85 million for the remainder of the space. Utilization would be 30 weeks. Visits would be about 48,000 guests practicing and playing games 5 hours daily with an annual revenue of about $315,000. This is an image or a rendering of the court barn. Kids are playing basketball, but again, it could be any sort of court, sport that could go in there. Phase 5 is our guest services and reception. This would take place in our exhibit hall or the main entrance that you saw at earlier pictures. This cost is estimated at about $200,000, and the enhancements would include things like furniture, fixtures, equipment, a guest services desk to greet guests as they come in, lobby flooring, paint, lighting, all the things that make them a welcoming entrance. And this is an image of what it could look like once those enhancements are made.
I think it's important to recognize that much of the investment around the Canada Centre has already proven itself, with private investment related to the Volley Barn as well as the Pickle Barn in place and either operational or looking to operate right away. What we're working with your administration on and asking you to consider today is the investment in the latter phases of this project. Overall, I think you'll see that the investment that we're proposing is quite aesthetic. It's improvements to leveling of flooring, to painting, to upgrading washrooms, to changing lighting. This is not a concept of creating a brand new facility. It's using an existing facility differently than we have in the past. I want to highlight there's a couple large numbers on this that are important around sport court flooring. Because even after the investment has been made to aesthetically upgrade the Canada Centre, those sport courts are available to our city and can be moved anywhere they might like to be. So it does allow us to have an advanced position around sport tourism and recreational hosting. That being said, there's about $1 million of investment in phase 1. And secondly, there's about $1 million of investment in phase 2 and 3. When you look at the total project cost, what we're asking from City Council on a $2.8 million budget is for the investment of about $2 million. And we're asking for that opportunity so that we can go seek the remainder of the funds through provincial grants, through federal grants, or for self-funds or sponsorship dollars. But we need to see that there is a willingness to actually advance this project. And as our owner, we're looking for your support in not only meeting a need that you have, but an opportunity to enhance the programming of the Canada Centre. Lump sum, it's about a $2.8 million project that will upgrade the facility for the future. What does the operational model look like? At this point, our proposal is that it will be operated by third parties. So those that actually deliver the sport. The volleyball barn is doing it, the pickle barn is doing it, and the skateboard facility will do the same. Our belief is there is an opportunity to work with a number of local sport court groups to program the sport court space. But in a scenario where we weren't successful, Real proposes that we would operate it no different than we do the Infinity Plex or the Cooperator Center. I think the next slide is probably the most important one in the deck, and I know there's a lot of numbers, but the reality of it is there's a couple lines that we'd like to draw your attention to. On the first line are the estimated number of visits per hour, the number of days available. What's really important for Council to recognize is we continue to maintain our commitment to our major trade shows, including Agribition and Farm Show, our major spring home and garden shows, our major RV shows. You'll notice that this isn't a 52-week-a-year lease. This is actually variable between 30 and 42 weeks depending on the space. So it allows us to maintain all the commitments that we have in the building and the revenue and the earnings associated with those. We're projecting somewhere between 4 and 6 hours of daily use. To put that into perspective, when you contrast that against the Affinity Plex or the Cooperator Center, we would traditionally see 14 to 16 hours of daily use. So I do think that our approach has been modest. What I want to highlight in this is where it says annual average visits. We're projecting somewhere between 170 and 200,000 visits to this facility in its proposed state. That's a fairly significant amount of growth. Creates more activation in our community, creates more activation in North Central, creates more activation on our campus. All of that is valuable on a site that sees 3.7 million annual visitors because it represents 5 to 6% activity growth over the course of the year. Very complementary growth to what we see in other facilities on our campus. We're anticipating that the project generates about $540,000 in gross revenue and about $227,000 in earnings. The volley barn is a lease, the pickle barn is a lease, the skateboard barn is a lease, and the court barn will either be operated by ourselves or an independent operator. All that being said, the bottom line that you see in red is what the Canada Centre does today. Current operations of the Canada Centre itself loses $110,000 a year. And so it is important to recognize that this has a fairly significant impact on an organization that generates $500,000 in earnings in a good year. It represents a significant swing on the financial position, but most importantly, a significant swing on the performance of the Canada Centre. The next slide highlights what we anticipate in terms of visitation as well as revenue and earnings. The annual visitors are pure new visitors. So yes, we have trade shows. Yes, we have farm show. Yes, we have Agribition. We don't have any of the visitors related to pickle barn, volley barn, skateboard, court barn. All that being said, we anticipate about 200,000 more visitors to that facility than we see today. And frankly, those are profitable visitors that generate an EBITDA position for us versus a loss. So what are we proposing? We're proposing that we continue on the plan that's currently in place. Phase 1 has occurred during COVID. Phase 2 will be completed in the next few weeks. Phase 3, 4, 5, and 6 is what we're presenting to you for consideration as council. Like any project, there are a number of risks. That being said, I think this one is relatively minimal. There's always a challenge when you're in search of public funds for facilities, and we don't want to minimize the request. There's also a balance between our longtime users of these facilities and our proposed future investment. All that being said, I think the risks are relatively low and relatively minimal. So our request of you today.
So today, we as an organization are asking you for consideration and your feedback and for your support We are asking that you consider and support the modest investment into your Canada Centre that will rejuvenate this aging facility for existing user groups and provide new opportunity for recreational seekers within our community. We are asking you to consider a $2 million investment into the Canada Centre that has already been budgeted by your administration and invest these funds into improvements of one of your facilities managed by your municipal corporation. If supported, REAL will seek the remaining funds to complete the full scope of project work by our other levels of government, private support, and corporate investment from operations. We are asking for your support relative to material alterations within the Canada Centre that will bring more than 200,000 new users, support tourism opportunities, but most importantly, provide a valuable space for underserviced recreational guests. If supported, we are confident we can complete the phased approach by developing the Canadian Centre over the summer months and be prepared to receive new sport, new recreation, and new play in the fall of 2021, while maintaining our commitment to the major annual signature events. On behalf of the Board of Directors and our staff at REAL, I'd like to thank you for your opportunity to present, and we would welcome any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you. I know there will be one question. Can you please provide us with those slides to the clerk's office for distribution? That'd be awesome. I believe Councillor Shaw was first to ask questions. Go ahead, Trina.
Sorry. I have a question. I know this is kind of probably, well, not kind of, it probably is too early to say something like this, but I just kind of was wondering if this has ever been discussed. No, we're offering a new facility to 200,000 new people. It's beautiful. I totally support this. I think it's a great idea, especially in the area that it's in. Which leads me to the question, putting this big, beautiful complex in an area with a lot of marginalized young people, marginalized adults that face a lot of barriers in order to utilize a building like this, and I'm referring mainly to cost. Has there ever been a discussion, or could there ever be a discussion for these user groups to offer some type of an incentive to them, or for you guys, or for the user groups? I'm not sure where it would come from, but to say, you know, maybe Friday nights we have 2 hours of a fun night that's free for the kids in the community. Is that something that's ever been discussed with the user groups, or would this be something that you could implement with the user groups moving forward through the chair?
Tim, go ahead.
Thank you for the question. And through the chair, I think there's some strong programs in place today, but certainly I think we can always do more. You know, we do have a partnership with Kids Sport that provides access to funding through a number of communities. But I will say in all the assets that we operate today, we actually have a partnership with the Mamo-Atherton Center to make sure that we engage and provide opportunities. So at the Cooperator Center, we provide free community skates. At the Affinity Plex, we provide free community drop-ins, and we do the same at Mosaic Stadium as well, not only for field turf, but also for ice-fill activations this year. And so, although I don't have a specific answer for you, we do it today in partnership with Kids Sport as well as Mamo-Atherton, or programming that we offer, so I have every confidence that we would look to do the same in this new facility that's supported.
Okay, that's it's just something I just kind of wanted to be aware of and just have some type of an answer moving forward. And I appreciate, and I know Tim and I, we've talked about this before with Kids Sport and Mamo-Atherton. I really appreciate the initiatives that you guys have done already, and I really would like to see this move forward, and not just be you guys, but the user groups that are in there to engage with the community at a level where we could offer the services to more people within the community. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for this. This is a great presentation. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trina. Councillor Moll, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I was interested to hear that the building sits empty over 50% of the year. Being born and raised in Regina, I can kind of see you making that point. So, Mr. Reed and your team, thank you very much for your phased-in game plan. I love it. I love sports. I'm looking forward to supporting this. So it made me think of the building. So you said the building was built in the 80s. You didn't talk about the state of the building, the lifespan of the building. We've talked a lot about the Brand Center, the age there, how much has to be spent there for the maintenance and upkeep to keep that building up and going. Then I heard you mention, or maybe it was in the report, flooring can be removed for all of this installation. So there was material alterations within this $2 million. And also I'm wondering about permanent structures being in that building and attaching it to the lifespan. I'm just curious.
Yeah, great question. And through the chair, I'll tackle it in a few pieces. So the entire development of this facility was modular with intent. And the idea with it is when we host a major trade show, such as a home and garden show or Canada's Farm Progress show, Canada's Farm Show, somebody's going to kick me on that, or Agribition, we need to be able to take everything out. And so the relationship that we have is, it's essentially a click floor or a sport core floor. So it's really good to a provincial level of play. Beyond that, it becomes a bit challenging for certain sports. But it does allow us to pull everything out. And so we can pull everything out in a couple hours. We can also do the same with the skateboard user group. So everything will be designed that we can put a fork underneath it and we can pull it out to storage, run the trade shows, and come back in. In terms of the investment, most of the permanent investment, to your point, is aesthetics. It's going to be paint, it's going to be floor, it's going to be drapery to be able to cut things off. That being said, we will clean up the entranceways. We will clean up the washrooms. You know, for those of you that have been in there, that they're really pretty aged, I would say. That would be a compliment. And so we'll make them more modern, more accessible. And so the permanent investment will really be aesthetic through the chair. There will be some upgrades in terms of air conditioning units and heating units just because some of those are aged. We don't need to put a ton of money into this building. That being said, if this solution proves itself to be successful, we will probably want to have a more long-term discussion because, to your point, it's a pre-eng building. It was built in 1983, and that being said, it has lots of life left in it. It's just going to probably need more long-term investment. But for a building that's going to cost $20 to $30 million to build new and take 18 to 24 months, then this is something we can have in mind. So really the improvements will be lighting, aesthetics, floorings, washrooms, HVAC. Beyond that, we're not going to do major renovations.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear most will be modular. That was going to be one of my points. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Councillor Bresciani, go ahead.
Thank you. I have power back. I'm back on. Thank you for the presentation. So this fits really well, as you've indicated, into our recreation master plan that was approved from the last council. And I just have a question, Tim, in regards to the user groups and how they connect with Real. So is it that, do you guys do any outreach, or is it that they actually come to you in that regard, or how is this kind of coordinated through the chair?
Yeah, through the chair, and a great question. Thank you for that one. To be honest, in most cases, the user groups come to us. And I will say, probably driven by the fact that they're so sports specific. So if you're a hockey user, you come to us because we have amenities, or if you're a soccer user or a cricket user. And so you approach us with purpose. That being said, relative to the user groups within this facility, the volleyball group approached us and said, we'd like to develop this space. The pickle barn approached us and said the same, as did the skateboard group. And so we've also had a number of individuals approach us related to court sport, so relative to volleyball, to basketball, to badminton, and to indoor tennis. And so we've got a few groups that we've spoken to. So I think what we have done is we've shone a light on the commercial opportunity on campus through the Real 2.0, but in most cases this is the user groups coming to us saying we'd like an opportunity to lease or to develop.
Great, okay. Thank you for that. I know I have heard from the from the tennis community that there is not an indoor tennis anywhere you can play. We used to have a facility years ago, and so I was just kind of connecting that. I wonder if Tennis Saskatchewan had reached out at all. But also, I just want to comment on the pickleball, and I can just share the experience that you're right, it is the fastest growing sport, and it is the multiple of ages which gets people to the facility, which I think is really, really key, and that was part of the Recreation Master Plan. So again, just thank you for that. That's all I have. Great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just meant to remind folks, just questions for now, please. Councillor Zakidniak.
Thank you. So thank you for coming here and for this report. There's lots of exciting opportunities here. I do have some clarification. So in relation to the skate park facility, my understanding is that is phase 3 and it'll be in place for the fall of this year. And the commitment is to have that active for now for the next 2 years prior to making a permanent decision. Is that accurate?
Through the chair, it is.
Okay, so then after 2 years, there is the possibility to dedicate permanent space for a skate park facility, like that consideration will be given at that time?
Through the chair, it has been. I think it will be more a discussion about how has this model proven from a viability standpoint, and is there a desire for us to create a more permanent option within the Canada Centre. So yes, it's a short-term solution, but certainly we would like to see skateboarding as part of our campus community for a long time to come.
Great. And so when events take place, we already discussed that these amenities would be temporarily removed. Approximately, I think I saw that actually, if you can just provide some clarity of, I think it depends on which part of the center we're talking about, but there's a range of how many days of year that these will be utilized for the original purposes. Is that accurate?
It is, and through the chair, in terms of the range, the volley barn, so the initial install, has the longest period of time, which it affords that lease group about 294 days of use when it's not programmed for other events. The pickle barn, the skate barn, and the court barn, which I'm sure will get better names, but they are kind of catchy for now, get about 210 days of use. And so to your point, essentially there's 210 days of use. We would have to pull them out for other trade shows and major events.
Sorry, just to clarify, for 200, can you clarify that the 210 days, that is the days that these groups will be able to use them, or these are the days that they'll be needed for other events?
So those are the days that the groups will be able to use them. So to be specific, the volley barn will have 294 days of use, the pickle barn will have 210, the skateboard facility will have 210, and the court facility will have 210 days.
Okay, and then during that time, these groups will just be responsible for finding other amenities. Like, we don't have plans to try and assist with that process. Is that accurate?
I think we would certainly be willing to assist. We just don't have space. And
right.
So through the chair, what happens in the times where this amenity is not available, and to speak candidly, the Canada Centre is one of the last rental facilities that we have, but it is big and allows us to do lots of things. So the only time when we would be asking these user groups to leave their space is when we have campus-wide signature programming. And so we won't have space on campus. That being said, certainly I think if this proves itself, that's a discussion for long-term planning on the real campus. Because they are year-round sports, and they likely should have dedicated space in the future.
Great. My final question is, I didn't see letters of support from the Regina Skate Coalition and the private investor in relation to pickleball. I assume that they're supportive of these plans, but I just wanted to clarify that with you folks.
They're in the agenda.
Okay. Well, I missed that somehow. Okay. Well,
just for clarity through the chair, we do have a contract in place with the volleyball user group. We have a contract in place with the pickleball user group. And pending approval, I think we'll have a contract in place almost immediately with the skateboard user group. So I think there are letters of support, but even beyond that, I would say there's contractual commitments for those space, which likely speak to the value that those stakeholders have in this concept.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. There seems to be no further questions from committee, so thank you very much. I welcome you to stay tuned to the meeting, but you can now leave the call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have some further delegates, both from the Regina Skateboarding Coalition. I'm told they're going to be attending together. Is that right? All right, perfect. I have Shane Roche and Noel Wendt. If you could, please identify yourself for the record, who you represent, and where you reside.
Thank you. My name is Shane Rioch, and I am president of the Regina Skateboarding Coalition. And I grew up here. I've been in Regina my whole life, and I'm coming to you from home office in the Cathedral area.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm Noel Wendt, and I'm representing the Regina Skateboarding Coalition as well. And I live in Regina. I've worked with the city of Regina as a representative of the skateboard community since 1998, helping to operate the previous indoor skateboard park from 1998 to 2013 with a similar model to what is being proposed today.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you, and thank you for your time today. I know you've had a long morning already. Noel and I are definitely mellow from the day spa music on your teleconferencing line, so we're excited to get a chance to talk to you today. Yeah, I think that what we would like to talk about, as you understand from the materials, is really a reboot of the Pathgate Park, which Noel just referenced. And I think that that was a concept that was proven over 16 years, at the time the longest indoor skate park in the city or in the country. Since that time, based in large part to significant investments by the city in outdoor parks, this is an activity, a recreation that has really grown. And like Regina itself, the skateboarding culture looks different than it used to, with a lot of diversity, a lot of new faces, a lot of new skaters at the main park in Wascana, and of course the Harbor Landing facility as well. What we'd really like to see is this as a full year, a year-round activity. And I know some of the people in the room, I think, in passing, have a connection with skateboarding. Skateboarding is not a fringe activity anymore. Each of us grew up with skateboarding as a mainstream recreation. And I think that the city's consideration, we don't usually think of pickleball and skateboarding at the same time, but the premise is similar. These are, I would say, non-traditional sports that are growing in popularity, have an active participation, and I think that it's a great opportunity for us to partner, for us to take on the operational aspects, to look at to you as an open collaborator and primarily as a funder. And having discussed with Real, and I know Tim had a presentation about the larger vision of this space, I think it's a really good opportunity to provide low-cost recreational options to Regina youth. And the location, I think, is important because the Skateboarding Coalition is committed to inclusivity, accessibility, and, of course, collaboration. And I think having a centrally located, safe, well-supervised facility that's accessible to some communities that might face other barriers to participation is a really strong strategic investment. I'll leave the comments to you, Noel, on the existing model that worked so well. I would still be working if we were attending games at Taylor Field, but of course it was part of the redevelopment of that space, so the old Heritage Building is no longer. And if there's an opportunity to have the same kind of facility and a space for community and for competition and skill development, centrally located, I think that would be an amazing thing for the whole community. So Noel, I'll turn it over to you to maybe talk a little bit about your experience, because you were the main architect of that earlier facility.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yes, the previous facility was supervised. It was ran by what was known as Skate Regina, which has been essentially rebranded as the Regina Skateboarding Coalition. So the facility is supervised. We'll have first aid training for all supervisors. Helmets are mandatory. All the ramps are built from wood, and there's flexibility to provide new challenges for participants. It's not just one design, a one-off. We can change things and implement new designs easily. And there can be input from the users because of that, which is great. And because of our history with events on the real grounds, a lot of these designs implement being able to move the ramps. So yeah, it's worked in the past, and really essentially what we're proposing is the same model, and just the importance of a facility like this for the winter months is paramount for the skateboard community.
Great. Thank you very much. I do see some questions here. Councillor Bresciani, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. I would also just like to know, so in regards to this kind of a concept, would there be, because my son skateboarded at that old place in there, and you had to bring your own board and all that kind of stuff, would there be something where you could actually get a board there for a nominal fee, or someone there to also maybe give some basic lessons or things like that? Is that something that you would envision for this, through the chair?
Sorry,
go ahead, Noel.
Yes, we've discussed several different programming options for this facility, and many of those things have been considered. Whether it be rental or specific programs at certain times for users who may not have access to skateboard equipment. So yes.
Okay, that's really great. So can I just ask, when that one closed at the exhibition, was there anywhere else that kids were able to skateboard at during the winter? Through the chair?
Yeah, yes. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, our rhythm's off in different rooms here. So you go ahead, please.
Yes, there is a private indoor skateboard park in the city, in the north end. The size of the facility has provided a lot of constraints, just because of the size of the skateboard community versus the size of that facility. It can't accommodate the amount of people that want to skateboard. So that has been an issue.
Great, exactly. Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Perfect, thank you. Councillor Stadenchuk, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, a question. I just want to know, we have letters of support that are attached to the agenda, but could you tell us what difference skateboarding and the skateboard community, what difference it has made in the lives of some youth in the city? Through the chair.
Well, I think that having two sons that skateboard, and that was really my entry point. I have been around skateboarding. I'm hopeless at it myself, but I've observed different skate parks and different gatherings for skateboarders, and I'm really taken by the self-governance of this as an activity. I mean, there aren't really rules. It is not an organized sport. It's almost like a creative art that people do individually in a shared space. So there's a sense of community, but people focus on their own skill development, and it's really success through repetition, which is ideal for youth development. So I would say that it's not hard to find somebody who experiences skateboarding and really feels saved by that. We have a lot of kids that are from different socioeconomic backgrounds that we see over time that have this as something that patterns their life and gives them the opportunity to engage with others from different backgrounds, etc. So I wouldn't want to, I don't think you could overstate the impact of skateboarding on participants. And I think that to Councillor Bresciani's comment, which is a great idea, making sure that this is inclusive and accessible, and if folks don't have a board, they can still come into that space, get a little bit of fundamental skill development, and really, build their own foundation. So, Councillor Stadichuk, I think that it's a huge investment in personal growth, and I hope that covers your question.
Yes, it does. Thanks. Second question, you mentioned that you would like to have a space that is full year. We have heard that there would be times when the space would not be available. What would the options be for youth then? Would they just have to wait until they had the opportunity to be able to skate when it is available? Or do they have other options? So it was mentioned the private facility, but is that, I wasn't sure what you meant. I guess I'm asking for clarification of what you meant by full year.
Well, my thought is that of course, long term, because I think this is a project that will develop into something more permanent. I really feel that way. And at this interim stage, or in this developmental opportunity for the next 2 years, we understand that we have to be flexible. And we're very gracious, grateful rather, for even the vision, like meeting with Rio. We weren't preaching. We were kind of preaching to the choir. We weren't kind of demonstrating but they still took a chance on our short-lived project this year. And going in and out, that's what we had to do with the old Heritage Park. We were really encouraged when Tim suggested that they would work with us to move these modular builds. We have access to their forklifts, sheltered storage facility. And really, that's just the way it will go until we can find something a little more permanent. Now, 306 is in the north part of the city, and I don't see this in competition with that facility. Other cities have more than one option, but the central location, the accessibility, and the supervision at this facility, I think, distinguishes it.
Okay, thank you. Last question, just I know that you talked about the community a lot. But are there transferable skills? If you learn to skateboard, does it transfer into other kinds of sports or activities? I can think of one famous snowboarder. Yeah,
as long as you're not asking that personally, I haven't found any. But yes, of course. It's all coordination. And as I mentioned before, that repetition until you get something right. That's really the point here. No two people skate the same, but developing, it's physically demanding, it's mentally challenging. And I think that the confidence that comes from achievement translates to outside of physical activity. It translates into an individual's confidence. So again, I didn't grow up skating, but I couldn't feel stronger about it having observed it all these years. It's a really great low-cost option for youth.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Zakidniak, go ahead.
Thank you. So my understanding then is that, as mentioned, this is an interim solution, so the Regina Skates Coalition will continue to work with REAL to make plans in the meantime for a permanent skateboarding facility. So I just want to clarify that understanding first through the chair.
No, do you want to field this?
Yes, we're looking to solidify something more permanent. The centralized location of the Reels facility would be perfect for this. Yeah, it's an exciting opportunity, and you know, we've been working with skateboarding for a number of years, and look forward to a number of years moving ahead as well.
Wonderful. Okay, that's great news. And then just to clarify, I'm looking at the agenda packet right now, and I see that there were letters of support submitted by several different First Nations groups and also the YWCA. It does not appear that you folks sent in a letter of support, so I just want to clarify that because I was told differently. Was there a letter of support from you all sent in?
Well, maybe that's an oversight on our part. We put together the materials and made the connections. Our board was active to get these letters of support, and so the submission is really from the Regina Skateboarding Coalition, and so we actually me specifically drafted the content that was used for the package.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to get some. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and you know, open to advice and guidance. This is this isn't the day job for us. It's off the side. So if you could recommend, or if you'd like to see something specific, I'm happy to accommodate.
No, I just wanted to. There was some. It's not on your end. I think that just from an earlier statement by the chair, it's appeared to me like I was missing a letter of support from you folks. But I think I understand. The letters that I'm seeing are the ones that I'm supposed to be seeing. So that's fine. I appreciate it, and I'm happy to support this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right, thanks, folks. You can now leave the call, and we'll move on to the report. Thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, thank you for your time.
EX 21-44. I'll pass it off to Ms. Harluck to provide an introduction, and then I'll need a mover.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So administration, as the report has indicated, was approached by both the skateboard groups and the pickleball groups. As you know, we have a partnership framework, and that's why they came to us to have that discussion. Once we had a discussion and learned more about what they were looking for, we brought in Reel because we saw the opportunity to have this partnership where it could be located on Reel's lands. So after these meetings, we were able to come to an agreement with Mr. Reed, and Mr. Reed worked with these groups to come to an agreement. As we said that through the report, it is an opportunity for us to put in $2 million to see this come to fruition, and for the opportunity to include the multi-sports courts to this plan, which could assist in the recovery of COVID related to recreation and addressing some of the issues organizations have indicated by having they've indicated that accessing gymnasium space has sometimes been difficult, and as our Councillor Bresciani had indicated, like for tennis as an example, we do have courts available at the field house. However, they're not dedicated spaces. So we're working to try and accommodate as best as we can, and working with our partners at Reel to see these things come to fruition. In order to move this forward, the way we see it working with the $2 million is on page 2 of the report, the financial impacts. What we would do with our recreation and cultural capital plan that was approved by council is that we would be doing cash flowing with these monies to be able to bring this development on sooner. And as indicated in the report, we would just cash flow this in order to bring this on, but not with the other projects, which is actually the spray pad. and the partnerships funding, we would just look at how we could accommodate those projects through our existing budgets and rebalancing. And so the rebalancing would take really place in 2024. That's when we would need to have that done. So between now and then, we'll be able to have those discussions and figure out how we can make it all work so that the plan doesn't see any slowdowns. And we'd be happy to answer any questions. Oh, the one other thing I would add with the skate park is during these 2 years, we'll assess whether this is the right space for the skate park or whether or not there's other opportunities. So this really gives us that opportunity through this proposal to look at that and do the assessment that we need. So we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Terrific, thank you. The report is moved by Councillor Bresciani. Go ahead, Laurie.
Thank you, Councillor, Deputy Mayor. So this is, I think this fits well with the Recreation Master Plan, and I think that we're utilizing our own spaces and we're upgrading them. I guess the question I'm going to ask is with the pickleball, just to use that as an example, is there an opportunity at some time, I know there was discussion, to look for outdoor courts? How does that work with the plan, the overall plan? So when we're committing to these dollars now for these courts, but how does it work with the overall plan in negotiating and that kind of thing? How does that work through the chair?
Ms. Harlech, go
Through
ahead.
you, Mr. Chairman, I might start and then ask Ms. Shaley to add. So there's always opportunities to work with REAL, but we have other plans in other parts of our facilities that we are looking for outdoor pickleball space. So I might ask Ms. Shaley to go over the plan where we might see that additional outdoor pickleball spaces come to fruition.
Thanks. Ms. Shaley, go ahead.
Through the chair, this does not the discussions we've had previously through the Recreation and Culture Capital Program regarding outdoor pickleball facilities. So we do have a budget line of, I believe it's about $1.5 million spread between 2022 and 2023. In that plan, that would allow us to further engage the community and do some design work and construction of additional facilities to meet the needs of the pickleball community.
Okay, great. That's great. Thank you. I think the other piece here is the fact that this facility is so large that we're able to utilize it, and it's not 100%. But with the funding now with COVID and from the federal government or provincial government, has there been any funding that's come from either level of government in regards to, and I guess I'm going to speak really to the federal level, for increased participation as we come out of COVID? Has there been any dollars that we're able to get for recreation through the chair? And in this regard.
Ms. Harlech.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware at this point, although the federal government is putting in many different programs for recovery. So if there is those opportunities, I will definitely take advantage of anything that might come forward from the federal or provincial government with regards to grants for recreation.
Okay, thank you. And just a comment, I absolutely support this, and I also want to make note that the work that Tim Reed and REAL has done to coordinate and collaborate with the groups and future groups that could be going there. So I think this is a win-win for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. A question for the administration on the financing. $2 million capital contribution from the Recreation and Cultural Capital Plan. Does this in any way affect the building of an indoor pool or the refurbishment of the indoor pool, or is that a separate funding line?
Ms. Harlech.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So no, it does not. We have our 10-year capital plan, and this is a cash flow issue for us, but it's not going to impact those projects at all, or the plan that we
Thank you very much. Great, thank you. I'm pleased to hear that. I support this. Something that hasn't been mentioned specifically is that this project, apart from the recreational benefits it provides, turns a money-losing facility into a money-making facility, albeit in a modest way. That's a real improvement. I support this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mayor Masters, go ahead.
I just wanted to add in terms of comments that I know Councillor Bresciani gave a shout out to Real. I just wanted to give a shout out to administration. I know that you've been struggling with the demand for some of the court space, specifically under the duress of COVID-19 when schools shut down. And so really appreciate the collaborative effort that was undertaken. And this is a great project. Well done.
Thank you. It is a great project. Seeing no further questions, call for a vote on this report, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll begin with Councillor Bresciani, please.
In favor.
Councillor Moll.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor Hawkins.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Carries 11-0, Deputy Mayor.
Great, thank you. We only have an hour left. Lots of agenda items. So we're going to triage the rest of this. We're going to move ahead to EX 21-46, Buffalo Pound Plant Renewal Financing. We do have a delegate here, Ryan Johnson. Pardon me? Oh, all right, so there is no delegate currently. So again, to members of committee, we are bypassing the 2020 annual report. We will deal with that at another time. Oh, yes, sorry. All right, we need a motion to table EX 21-45.
So moved. Mancinelli.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the annual report will be read at a future executive committee meeting. EX 21-46. Mr. Lacey, provide an introduction for us, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So the Buffalo Pound Water Treatment Corporation is responsible for the operation and maintenance of the Buffalo Pound Water Treatment Plant, which provides the cities of Regina and Moose Jaw with a reliable and affordable supply of safe and high-quality drinking water that meets the needs and expectations of consumers. And under the unanimous membership agreement with Buffalo Pound Water Treatment Corporation, that corporation is jointly owned by the City of Regina at a 74% share and the City of Moose Jaw at a 26% share. It has been nearly 30 years since Buffalo Pound's main plant has seen a significant renewal. The plant renewal project was initiated to ensure Buffalo Pound can continue to provide that safe and high-quality drinking water to the city and to allow for continued population growth. The plant renewal project has been approved for funding under the Investment in Canada Infrastructure Program. And under that program, Buffalo Pound will receive approximately $163 million in federal and provincial funding or grants towards that renewal. Buffalo Pound must demonstrate as well that they have funding in place for the remaining $60 million of construction costs, and that $60 million is basically the municipal or local contribution under the ICIP program. In February, Council approved Buffalo Pound to enter into negotiations with lenders to secure that financing. And at that time, administration was directed to return once that financing had been secured for approval of the borrowing, and that's why we're here today. Buffalo Pound, in consultation with the City of Regina and the City of Moose Jaw, completed a procurement process for financing, and the Toronto Dominion Bank provided the lowest priced proposal and has been selected as the financial institution to provide that financing. Before you is a request to approve for approval to secure financing from the Toronto Dominion Bank, as well as approval with respect to guaranteeing the city's portion of that debt of $44 million, and that's based on the city's ownership presentation in that corporation. I should mention a similar report has gone before Moose Jaw's Executive Committee this past Wednesday, and it received unanimous approval by their Executive Committee, and it's going now to their council for approval. And I don't know if Mr. Johnson has joined us online, but certainly myself, administration, and Mr. Johnson and members of Buffalo Pound are happy to answer any questions you have with the report before you.
Perfect, thank you. So with committee's indulgence, I would like to ask folks to treat Mr. Johnson as a member of administration so we can actually ask everybody questions. Mr. Johnson, of course, is representing the Buffalo Pound Treatment Plant Corporation. I need a mover for this report, please.
Hawkins.
Councillor Hawkins. Do you want to start with questions, Bob?
No, I'm good with this, thanks. I'm fine with it. It's a good proposal. We've looked at it. It'll be great to guarantee good water into the future for the city of Regina and Moose Jaw, and I think it's a fine project. I also appreciate the fact that there's a federal contribution that's important here.
Thank you. Any questions for administration or Mr. Johnson? Councillor Bresciani, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for being here. I have, in regards to the upgrades that we're going to do for the, I guess it's going to be for the next 25 to 30 years for the longevity of our water. With these changes, will there be any concerns or problems if the water facility goes through at Diefenbaker? Is that being consulted and talked about as there's discussions in both pieces through the chair?
Well, that has to do with the management of the facility, so maybe I'll ask Mr. Johnson if you'd like to respond to that.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through the councillor. So we are now an engaged stakeholder with the Conveyance Channel project. So there are discussions that have happened preliminarily, and there'll be more detailed discussions as we get into later phases. But the short answer is there'll be no impact to us based on that project proceeding. If anything, we may have a slightly better quality of water that will come down, but it won't change the types of treatment processes that we require.
Okay, that's good to know. That's all I have. Thank you very much, and thank you for the work you do.
Thank you.
Any questions about the financing report? We'll have a chance to talk about the actual treatment facility and its annual report at a later date. Councillor Mancinelli, financing.
I understand the financing. I just want to clear up a point on the report to make sure I understand it correctly. This won't affect the water rates for users. It's already been encapsulated in what we've been seeing for user rates going previously and forward, correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the council, that is correct. Our rates for capital will not change for the next 25 years. They are locked in at $250 a megaliter.
Jason, that was it?
Yeah, sorry it was. I got funny internet today. Sorry about that.
Okay. All right, seeing no further questions, call the vote on EX 21-46.
I'll begin with Councillor Hawkins, please.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Mole.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Mayor Masters. Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Carries 11-0, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I'll call for a motion for private session, please.
So move, Bresciani.
Councillor Bresciani, any opposed? All right, thank you. We'll go into private session. We just need 5 minutes. I believe the mayor is going to stick around for the first item, and then you're going to deal with media. Okay, all right, 5 minutes. We just need to...